There are vegetables that you can plant once and then they keep coming back year after year. You can keep harvesting from them. Today, we're talking about how to grow perennial vegetables or how to start a food forest, a forest garden. This concept of, most of the time we think about our vegetable garden, we buy plants, we get seeds, we start plants from seed every year. These plants, you start them once, you plant them, they come back year after year, and you can continue to harvest from them, and some of them really do taste good. And it's always been really interesting to me, just wondering why some of these aren't more popular. So I am starting a ton of seeds this year. I've been passionate about this for a few years now, and there's been some plants I've grown and enjoyed, and some I've just been excited about growing for years, and this is the year I'm finally growing some of these. I actually have a little bit more garden space this year than I did last year, so this new garden bed I'm turning into just a perennial edible garden is the plan. There's going to be a mix of all kinds of chaos in that garden. I'm going to fill that garden bed up with as much as possible. But today, if you want to learn about some perennial vegetables, so vegetables you plant once, you can harvest year after year. Some of the more popular ones, the ones, what they look like when they're first coming up, that's what we're talking about. I also have some books to share. Let me go live on Instagram. I've got my computer over here. Welcome all the Instagram folks in. So if you have any questions too about your garden, your landscaping project, my name's Eve. If you're new here, welcome to Garden Project Academy. I'm a landscape designer. I'm a horticulturist. I've been gardening since I fell in love with this as a kid. I found a library book on, growing herbs, and I fell in love with California poppies and the fact that they were so beautiful, and also that you could eat the flower petals. I thought that was magical. Started growing things from seed in little cups and containers, and from there it led to this entire career. So if you're starting a garden or you need help with your landscape design or planning your yard, this is Garden Project Academy. Welcome. I'm here to help. So some of the cuties I am so excited about starting this year. We've got Good King Henry right here, and I'm working with the GoPro, so it's probably not going to focus super well, up close. But at this point, we just have the first two little leaves. They're pretty narrow, but Good King Henry, it's like a perennial spinach, essentially. It's these branches covered in leaves. I have eaten this one before. Shout out to Joe and Sally, some of the most amazing people, most amazing gardeners locally, who Joe he really introduced me to some of these plants he had in his garden, was growing a bunch of these things. So years ago, I was able to sample some of these plants, and it tastes really good. It's kind of like spinach, where it's a little bit spongy. So like maybe that's not everybody's favorite salad green, right? But there's some other amazing plants as well. So I'm gonna check in on the chat over here. Yeah, if you have any questions about any of this in particular, or any just in general questions about your garden project, your landscaping project. One thing I love about live streaming is it's a conversation. And if you're here watching the replay too, hi, welcome. Keep sharing your questions, your thoughts in the chat, or in the comments below. Then I always love reading through and answering questions, continuing the conversation afterwards. And one of your comments might also inspire a future video if you ask a certain question about your landscaping project. Happy to help out. So we looked at Good King Henry. This is one in particular I'm very excited about. I don't get quite as much sun out here as you might expect. It's a little sunroom, right? It's not a proper greenhouse, but it has some mirrors on some of the top windows. It reflects a lot of the light out and away. So some of the plants they're a little bit leggy, so they're growing really thin and stretching out, trying to reach for more sunlight. A sign that your seedlings aren't getting enough sunlight is when there's a lot of extra space in between leaves. So kind of shorter, more compact seedlings, they're getting enough light. You'll probably hear airplanes and such going over as well out here. This is perennial kale. It's also known as walking stick kale because it grows really tall, and it can last for, they say 3 to 5 years. Some people say 4 to 6 years. It's hardy to USDA Zone 8. It might be 7. I should know that. I'm based out of USDA Hardiness Zone 8. So your plant hardiness zone, if you are, I know we have some more experienced gardeners watching. We have some new gardeners as well. If you're new to what is a hardiness zone, there's a map. You can look up your area, what your zone is in your area. The only thing that your zone refers to, It's the lowest average temperature in the winter. So some plants can only survive so much cold in the winter. Even in dormancy, if it gets too cold, then they won't come back the next year. Perennial kale. So kale you plant once. So again, it's when I introed this video, I said things that you can plant once and harvest forever. When it comes to the good King Henry, again, it's like a giant spinach bush. It's a plant, right? But it can get to be pretty big. Like I remember seeing it a good 3 feet tall and wide. Again, in my friend's garden, just salad greens, right? So that's one that you can plant once, and it'll just keep going year after year. And you can just keep harvesting, spring, summer, fall. You could be harvesting the greens. I think it tastes best in the spring and summer. But so this is one, I said that you plant it once, it lasts forever. Planting a kale plant once and being able to harvest it for, 3 to 5 years, 6 years, instead of just 1 to 2 years, like a typical kale plant, that's pretty cool. So I was reading more about walking stick kale, and it's called walking stick kale because it can get to be 6 feet tall or even significantly taller than that over time, depending on how happy it is in that exact spot. So I'm so excited about that. I got these seeds from Baker Creek, a seed company, so rareseeds.com, shout out. And I'm interested to see how it tastes. I was reading more about this this is one of the best books if you're interested in this, a whole book on perennial vegetables that you can, again, things you can plant once, crops you can plant once and harvest year after year in your backyard garden. And I was reading about this. They said that the specific genetics, are some walking stick kales that, depending on where these seeds came from, where they were grown, there's, kind of varieties essentially that are, some of them taste a little bit better than others. He said that he had got one that he tried. It was more like a little bit more rubbery than another one he tried, which he thought was delicious and just as good as any other kale or collard green. So I'm excited. And honestly, even if it's not like if I'm comparing, I'm lining up all of the kale plants and collard greens and other plants in that family in my garden, and I'm tasting all of them. The reality is that as long as it's not like too strong, I'm going to be cooking it with garlic and onions or putting it in soup or something anyway, right? So I'm so excited. I would love to hear in the comments, have you ever heard of some of these plants? Have you ever grown these before? If you have experience, or if there's other perennial food crops like this that you're interested in growing. I know I help a lot of people who reach out to me. They take my course, so I guide you through the process of creating a landscape design. A lot of people reach out, they're planning to create a food forest. And these are some of the plants that they're incorporating. So I hope the sound, let me know in the chat if the sound gets too bad. It sounds like a neighbor just started up a leaf blower, which is perfect timing, of course, but shouldn't be too bad. This is one, when you think about a perennial vegetable, I think some of the most obvious ones that come to mind for the more experienced gardeners, I'm a master gardener volunteer. Everybody, the first things that, when I bring this up with master gardener friends, they say, oh, like asparagus. Asparagus is a really common, it's one of the first things to come to mind when you think about a perennial vegetable. So for the first time, I'm starting actually, I did start some asparagus from seed years ago. Second time growing this from seed. I've never was able to fully establish an asparagus patch, just the timing. It takes a few years. So starting from seed, not this year, the next year I should be able to harvest just a few asparagus spears from these young plants. And then by year, the third growing season, then you can harvest quite a bit more. So if you want to start asparagus, you want to harvest just the next year, you can buy crowns, which are basically somebody grew out asparagus plants, then they dug them up, and then you can replant the root system kind of like a bulb, right? So you can buy those where it already has a bit of a running start, so you can get asparagus that next year, and then significantly more by the second year. So when you start asparagus from seed, it's a lot cheaper. You get a lot more. It's more of a time investment. But supposedly, from what I've read, you also get a higher yield from plants that, I guess the process of the plant being dug up and sold as a crown and then being replanted. Supposedly, when they're started a little bit smaller like this in their forever home, then you're going to get a higher yield from these plants forever, indefinitely. And I do think they have some limited lifespan. I think I don't know the exact number. I have in my head somewhere it's like 15 years or 20 years or something. So they don't last forever, but very few things do. And you think about planting an asparagus. The wild thing about asparagus is, I mean, if you're new to growing some vegetable crops, asparagus it's the first shoot that comes out of the ground, and it seems almost ridiculous, like a joke. There's a thing online about how asparagus grows, like somebody's pretending that asparagus just grows. It's just like a spear comes up out of the ground, and that's what you harvest. That's the asparagus. So later on, it's actually in the fern family, and it grows into this big frond. So this is just a little teeny tiny baby version of that. I hope in the GoPro it's probably a little bit hard to see. Oh, it's not too bad. Hey, I'm glad to hear everything sounds okay. Thank you, Jessica. It's nice to see you. Pleasure having you. I know very little about vegetable plants that will come back year after year other than asparagus and rhubarb. Yes, eager to hear your recommendations. I love the idea of not restarting annually. Yeah, you got it. Rhubarb is the other really common one. And I think the third most, I'm thinking about like the most well-known, as far as, yeah, if you're the typical, even Master Gardener volunteers, these are kind of the ones that come to mind, right? So asparagus, rhubarb is the stalk of the leaf. So you get a rhubarb plant going year after year, you can harvest rhubarb. And then artichoke, that's the third most common, I think, recognized perennial vegetable. So it is an interesting question too. Why aren't some of these plants a little bit more common? I think that there's some subtle influence to this. You think about garden centers, like it's maybe a tiny bit of a conspiracy, but it's also not. It makes sense, right? But garden centers are slightly more likely. They're always putting the annual plants, the plants that just grow. So those of you who are new to gardening, annual plants, they grow in one growing season, right? So you start them from seed, or they start from seed outside, early in the season. They grow into a plant, they flower, they fruit, they go to seed, all in just one growing season, and then they start anew from seed the next year. So annual plants live for 1 year. Garden centers, a lot of the annuals are going to be the ones right out front, the annual vegetable crops, because, if you're buying your plant starts from the garden center, you come back next year and buy them again. There's a lot of breeding that's done for annual plants to make them really showy. There's a little bit more money in annual plants, right? So I think there's a part of that influence as well, was thinking about why aren't these plants more popular, because I always thought, well, they must not taste good, but you start learning more, and there's some amazing, incredible foods that are perennials, right? So that's an interesting one. Why aren't these plants more popular? That could be a part of the influence. Think about annual agriculture. There's a whole world of interesting things that go into why agriculture is what agriculture is. It's not because necessarily always that the annual plants are the best. There's some plants that it's pretty nuanced, but there's no reason. My point is that there's no reason why these plants aren't more popular food crops. It's not like they don't taste as good. So it's fascinating. It's so cool. I'm really excited to see how this perennial kale does. So great. Please keep your questions coming in the chat. So this is one. I'm very interested in perennial veggies. You're trying Caucasian climbing spinach this year. That's one that, so again, we've got like a vine with edible leaves. This is one I would like to try. I've never grown that one either. I'm really interested in that. So that's on my list for probably next year. I'll get some seeds and kind of keep expanding the garden here, the test garden. So I'm going to keep sharing about, in these live streams online in various ways. If you want to join my newsletter, gardenprojectacademy.com/newsletter. Links in the description below, of course. I'm going to keep sharing about all of this, what I'm harvesting, what I'm learning about the taste. If I start to, maybe with the perennial kale, for example, I've got tons of plants. So if you're local, if you want to follow Garden Project Academy on Instagram, Pacific Northwest, gardenprojectacademy.pnw. That's my local Instagram account that I just started recently. So I'm going to be giving out some extra plants for free locally through like a local plant swap. I'm excited to try, genetics and just see what does well. I am a little bit wary of, this is a good one to share, ordering seeds for some of the more obscure plants. I'm going to be really cautious about not introducing anything that does too well, that's maybe a little too aggressive, that'll start growing and, spreading into natural areas. It's something I don't know much about. I'm checking just anecdotally, of course you can look up your local weeds of concern, noxious weed lists, right? And not growing any invasive species, right, from there. But beyond that, if, bringing plant material from somewhere else can be a little bit risky in that way. So that's something I am paying attention to. Some of these crops, of course, like I've known people locally are growing them and love them. So as I'm learning more, that's something I'm considering. So yeah, please keep sharing your thoughts in the chat too. Caucasian spinach sounds awesome. So you're a family of 7 with too little space to grow enough food, but I'm really interested in the new container berry plants that I'm seeing nowadays. Yeah, there's growing food in containers. It's often where, if you're a beginner gardener, it's often where people will start by growing things in pots on their deck, for example, if you have low space. But there are plants that, if you think about it, even like a tomato or a pepper, you can get plants or seeds for tomatoes or peppers, for example, they've been hybridized they've been bred to grow better in containers, so they're happier, they're healthier, they get a higher yield. So this is an example. Some of these berry bushes, you can get really tiny apple trees that grow in containers. I've grown some of these columnar apple trees, they're called. So it's an apple tree. You can get it basically any type of apple, but it's grafted, or it's connected to a rootstock or a root system that stays really small. It's fascinating. So we take a really dwarf, a really small root system. It's happy to grow in a container. We get it growing, we cut it off, basically. We take all the leaves off of that one, and we take the stem of an apple that we want to grow, we graft it onto that root system. And the root system kind of determines the size, the health of the plant. It's happy to grow in a container. So there are, even if you're low on space, there are so many things that you can grow. So I want to show some of my favorite books just right off the bat. We have Perennial Vegetables. This is Martin Crawford, and this is Eric Toensmeier here. These two are some of the most popular go-tos for these books, or for this subject, right? So this is really what I found this again at the library when, years ago, and absolutely fell in love. Eric Toensmeier, he has a fantastic series of videos on his YouTube channel. I'll link to that below after this video. Let me write that down so I don't forget to do that. I'll link to that below if you're interested in seeing some of a tour of his garden and some of air potatoes. It's like a vine and it grows these tubers all over it. I was so inspired by his videos. So those are worth checking out, absolutely. And then Martin Crawford also has a series of plants, or books about plants that are, you plant it once, you keep harvesting from them year after year. We've got shrubs for gardens, agroforestry, and permaculture. So a food forest that's something that's commonly talked about. We're talking about how do you plant a food forest. I should probably define what is a food forest. It's the idea of we're creating an ecosystem, and a garden that's an ecosystem type garden. We're thinking about layers of trees and shrubs and so on, where we're integrating all kinds of edible food crops. We're thinking about plants that are happy to grow together, right? These concepts, there's trees with edible leaves, right? Linden trees, for example. You can think about you're planting a tree. Maybe you want a beautiful tree in your yard. Linden blooms they're gorgeous. They smell sweet. Maybe you want a beautiful tree in your yard. Why not also plant something that produces edible seed pods or edible leaves? And there's more plants like this than we realize. Even more experienced gardeners. This is a whole other world of gardening that not everybody is even aware of. And again, working in the gardening industry and volunteering as a master gardener volunteer with some of the most incredible gardeners. Some of them are starting to dabble with more and more of this. It sounds almost like a fantasy. You think about being able to head out and harvest leaves off of trees and shrubs and these crops that come back year after year. And it's not a fantasy. It's absolutely possible. Another good one, grow something different to eat. This is Matthew Biggs. This is one I got. Shout out to Ollie's. So I'm originally from the East Coast. Ollie's is an outlet store that is amazing. So I've seen this around more and more, and we're looking at some more of less commonly grown food crops. And for some people, these are really special cultural crops that have been grown for years and years and years. But it's not stuff that's sold at the garden center, right? So these things aren't new. It's just, we're starting to see the value in having more food in our yards and learning more about some of these. I think in general in the world of gardening, right? An interesting way to approach this too, that not everybody thinks about. You start by getting these books on perennial vegetables, for example. It's also worth getting your local foraging books, learning about your native plants that are edible. I'm obsessed with stinging nettle, and it sounds wild maybe if you're hearing this for the first time. Stinging nettle, yes, it stings, but it's a perfectly safe edible. You just need to heat or dry the stinging nettle plant, and then the stingers are not like thorns. They're little hairs. There's a little bit of acid that comes with that hair. So if you brush against that plant, out while it's growing, outside of a trail, right? Those little hairs and that little bit of acid that goes with those hairs, that's what's stinging you. And it's not a bad sting or a dangerous sting. It's annoying, right? It stings for a little while. I get, my skin will get like little bumps all over it if I brush against a stinging nettle plant, but it's one of the most incredible. It's delicious. It's very nutritious. So all you have to do is heat it gently. You can blanch it in boiling water. I just dehydrate it, and it's really high in iron. There's all kinds of things that are with stinging nettle, but this is a native plant. I think some people assume because it stings, right? It's often put into a category like it's a weed, or it's removed immediately if somebody finds it. And that's a shame. It's a native plant, supports native living creatures, native pollinators, native insects, and it's truly delicious. Tiny apple trees, it's amazing to learn how they graft them onto a smaller root system. It's so much fun. Grafting apple trees, it's really fun, and fruit trees can be so expensive, but if you find people locally who, I mean, even in rural areas around here, you could be driving down the road and there'll be apple trees that just are growing in a ditch somewhere, from somebody planted them at some point, right? If it tastes good, it was likely planted by somebody. The apple genetics are really interesting. If you throw an apple core out and an apple grows from seed, it often will be, like most of the apples that grow from seed are going to be a little bit more bitter, more tannic. So those are used for like making apple cider, for example. So a lot of the sweeter apples, it's just like genetically, statistically, you're more likely to get these more tannic apples. But occasionally there will be apples that are more sweet. It's been a long time since I've done the research into this. But yeah, anyway, the best way to grow your own apple tree, to start an apple tree, is not actually starting one from seed, because again, you don't know how that apple, it's going to be so different from the parent. You don't know how it's going to taste. So if you just find people who have reach out to local gardeners, learn about people who have apples that they really like. And you can order rootstock online. Really late winter, early spring, you take a really clean knife and you order some rootstock, right? You can get a bundle of 30 and it's so much more affordable. You could buy a bundle of rootstock for less than the typical apple tree at a garden center. You're trying to line up the cuts on the grafts. There's YouTube videos on this, and you wrap it up in something and you keep that apple tree during this dormancy period, late winter, early spring, you keep it super dark and cool. So you're taking, again, a stem from an apple tree. It's going to taste good. Maybe it's a local gardener's apple tree, a friend's apple tree. You're taking branches from these trees and you're grafting that. You're just connecting those two root systems, and then you let them grow together for a few weeks, few months while they're in that dormancy, and then by that spring you have an apple tree. So not every graft is going to take, that's the terminology, but if you start 10, as long as you line everything up right, you're probably going to end up with 9, right? You could end up with 10. I've done this. It's really cool project, and it's not that complicated. So if you are somebody who is relatively new to gardening, you want to start growing fruit crops, this is what makes it just like adding just like another pinch of that DIY to it, taking that next step. That's how you can create a food forest on a budget, or just save money in general. And it's a really fun project too. So shout outs to local, native plants, wild edible plants, and starting with a foraging field guide instead of a book on perennial, what are some edible local native food crops that I could be growing in my garden. Learning from local sources is the way to start. And this is one I'm obsessed with this book. It's called The Front Yard Forager. So this is something you maybe don't want to propagate per se, but Melanie Veras Herrera amazing book. So she's based out of Seattle area, so it's really relevant for anybody Pacific Northwest, west of the Cascades. But a lot of these plants, we're talking about weeds, right? Plants that are from some other corner of the world that are edible. They're here, they're growing in your yard. Really interesting when you think about plants. You're planting something that comes back year after year. Everybody know, dandelions, for example. It's a really common one where, you can eat dandelion greens, you can eat the flowers. You can eat clover greens. You can eat clover flowers too. I've made clover cookies, right? Clover muffins, just out of the flowers. There are many plants that we consider weeds that might come up in the hundreds or thousands in your yard that might be edible and delicious. So the one on the cover right here is it's bittercress. Some people call it shotweed. It's a peppercress. It's a peppercress. Bittercress is a little bit of a mean name, I think. I don't think it's too bitter. I think it's delicious. This time of year, there's about 1 billion of them coming up and going to seed. They're kind of an early season weed, but they're also like some people will go to the store and buy peppercress seeds and plant peppercress. It tastes just like it. It's a peppercress. There are many, many weeds that grow across the United States that, you think about clover and dandelions, and there are so many examples of these plants that are things you probably already have coming up in your yard that are really nutritious. They might taste really good. Some of them might not taste good if you just want to pick a salad green, right? But if you cook with it, you use it in some way. This is how we get more food out of our yard with less work, without relying on, having the time to grow things like this from seed year after year. If you think about it, I love growing tomatoes year after year. I'm obsessed with black strawberry tomatoes. Don't get me started. I love growing these things too. But if you are someone who just wants to, over time, start adding more of these crops to your yard, you plant things once and then they come up year after year and you can harvest from them. So I just got these. It was, just getting started on this project. Now I have this additional garden bed. I can start growing more of these crops. I was like, I got to find some walking onions, and a local plant sale, sure enough, I think they still have some available. So again, if you are local, follow me at gardenprojectacademy.pnw on Instagram. I also have a newsletter for the Pacific Northwest specifically. I'll link to all this in the description below, but if you go to my website homepage, gardenprojectacademy.com, there's a tab in the menu for that. So that's where if I have local classes or local events, or if I hear about something like this plant sale, right, where somebody is doing a fundraiser plant sale and they have some really unique things, like I can send out resources. It's a brand new list, brand new Instagram. But the walking, I guess I should finish talking about this first. Walking onion. This is, assuming that's what this is, I don't see any forming yet, so it could be some other type of allium, plant in the onion family. But so far so good. I think it will be one. I think it is one. The idea is this plant grows, and then at the end of one of these stalks, a little bulbette will form, and then the weight of that will bend these branches down toward the ground, and then it'll grow a new onion plant. And so that'll grow a new plant, and then that'll start doing the thing where at the ends of all the branches, it'll grow those new bulbettes, and then they'll bend down from the weight. So basically you have onions that walk across your yard and keep growing and growing. And then when you want something like a green onion, an onion in general, right, you just go and pull up the ones that you'd like. And if you really get a bunch of them established, then you have onions. So, and I think chives are very, this is more common. When you think about herbs, you can get this basically any garden center that's selling herbs, you're probably going to be able to get chives. I think it's a little bit overlooked. If you think about most people will have a chive plant, maybe a few, but you could grow a lot of chives and you're getting tons of that onion flavor. It's not like a massive crop, right? And for me, the chives do kind of fade out, a little bit into summer when the heat picks up a bit. But I'm excited to have like a ton of chives, so I can get a little bit of like just bulk onion, and they come back year after year as long as the squirrels don't get them. And I also just started some garlic chives as well. Very similar, perennial plant. It comes back year after year. A little bit more of a garlicky flavor than the traditional chives. The germination on this was just incredible. So you can get seeds for these things. Again, like the asparagus from seed. it's really fun. There's something so magical about starting these things from seed. We're making plants exist that didn't exist before. It's so affordable if you have the space and the capacity to do this. Sunny windowsill, right? I think about, I rent, planting these plants, propagating from them as long as I live here, and then when I move out, as long as my landlord, I think he's going to be happy with it, I can leave these plants. But imagine moving into a house that already has asparagus plants. And I just love that as a legacy to leave behind, if I end up moving somewhere else. And so some people, I guess, are a little hesitant to make some of these investments to buy asparagus crowns, right? But if you're starting things from seed, what a cool legacy to leave behind, to leave for the next place, the next people. Plants are so cool, Jessica. Yes, thank you for sharing. Let me check in on Instagram if anybody has any questions about your garden projects or questions about perennial vegetables. That's what we're talking about today. I got my computer over here, just checking in on the chat. This is another one really popular in the world of people talking about permaculture. So I am certified for permaculture design at OSU. I took that course 2015. Loved it. So much fun. So permaculture, I should define that. It's not about gardening necessarily. There's values. It's very sustainability focused. So they have their permaculture principles, but it does overlap a lot with sustainable food systems and gardening and perennial vegetables. Coincidentally, perennial vegetables, food forests. This is a huge part of just the ethos of permaculture and what that is. And the term itself, it stands for permanent culture, or some people say permanent agriculture. A lot of people in the world of permaculture, these values, it's thinking about, we're thinking in systems, right? It's very sustainability focused, creating closed loops and sharing generosity with others in the community. It's incredible. These values are, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't read about, the 12 permaculture principles and doesn't agree with all of them. So it's about more than gardening. It's so cool to learn about. Jessie Bloom is a great resource if you're interested in learning more. Like, her book is incredible about permaculture in general. So this is one, in this world of food forests, perennial agriculture, it's being very popularized. It kind of overlaps in this culture of, people who are also interested in permaculture. This is a really popular plant in the same community of people who are passionate about this. Jerusalem artichoke, it's called. And it does not make artichokes. It's not an artichoke. It is in the sunflower family, and it's a root crop. And it grows. This sucker will grow to be like a good 8 feet tall. And I've grown this a few times. It makes a lot of stems and leafy material. And so people use it as like a compost crop, right? This plant it's what's amazing is it captures energy from the sun, right? And it turns it into plant material. It does not need, like, you think about like root crops, like potatoes, for example. It doesn't need this. It does not need like quite the fertilizer that so many annual crops need, or so many popular crops need. This is something that you plant the root, it gets rolling, and you get a patch of it established. It makes so much leafy material, but then the root itself is what we're eating. It needs to be cooked properly. Apparently it can make you a little bit gassy. This is one that, like, if you're going to cook it, you have to look up the best way to cook it. I've grown it a few times. This is going to sound completely ridiculous, but I've grown it on multiple occasions. I've never eaten it because I've never had my act together enough. So this is the year I actually found this at a specialty grocery store. They were selling Jerusalem artichoke, like the tubers, the roots. And I bought a bunch of them and I put them in the bottom of some flower pots. And so this is one that, this is the year I'm gonna start enjoying these. What else we got? Skirret is another one. This is it has not come up yet. So this is one I started the seeds a few weeks ago, and then I planted them in this pot. I put the pot in the refrigerator. So these seeds in particular, they needed what's called cold stratification. It's a fancy way of saying I put them in the fridge for a few weeks, because it'll increase the number of seeds that sprout if it experiences a period of kind of cold and damp. And then you put them in the fridge for a few weeks, and then you pull them out, and then when it warms up, that'll trigger germination. And if you just planted them, you probably get some of them coming up, but not as many as if you put them in the fridge for a few weeks. Just, plant them so the seeds get damp, they can absorb some of that moisture, then they sit in that cold. It's really fascinating. So I just realized yesterday that I forgot about them in the fridge, in the back of the fridge, the poor things. So, they're fine, but they probably would be coming up by now if I had thought to remember to pull the poor cuties out of the fridge. So yeah, that's one that I'm really excited about. I've got showy milkweed here, which has edible parts as well. It's something I'm still learning more about. Tons of perennial kale. These are all the new things I'm starting this, maybe not all. I'm going to get some daylilies too. Some of the orange daylilies, I have eaten those. The roots of the orange daylilies, the flowers are edible. I'm excited to keep propagating all these, see how they do. And some of them I've eaten before. Some of it's like asparagus, right? We all know I love asparagus. So some of these are not so new. Some of them are really new. And I'm excited to see, for example, how many years does the walking stick kale live in my yard? And how does it taste? So I'll keep you up to date. If you want to follow, subscribe. If you haven't done that, give this video a thumbs up. I feel like such a robot saying what everybody else says, but those things, if you're watching right now, giving this a thumbs up, actually it does help a lot. It gives me a little boost in the algorithm. And if you want to learn more about this or hear more about this too, let me know in the comments. Following along, my plan is to keep sharing in my newsletter and here as well, just some updates along the way, what it's like when I start harvesting some of these things, any new plants I start trying out. These books are incredible, and I'll share some links to resources in the description below. So if anybody has any last minute questions, thank you. I see the thumbs up. That's fantastic. It truly does help. Wonderful. I'll hang out for just one more moment here and see, because I know it takes a moment to, type in the chat. But if anybody has any questions about their yard or garden, your project, if you're working on a landscape design, that's what I do. Free resources while I'm hanging out. I have a free mini course. It's all about right plant, right place. So if you're wondering, you want to plant something, you want to know how do you do that research? What are all of the things that you need to consider before you put a plant somewhere to make sure that it will do well? As best as we can research. I have a checklist for that. I call it the perfect plant checklist, and that's free mini course. I'll have that linked below. So it's like an hour long. So you can watch those videos and learn, basic, not basic skills. Like this is, I think that even as a more experienced gardener, when I made this course, it was interesting. What are all of the things that we need to consider before we put a plant somewhere? All of that's compiled into one place, one resource. So there's that mini course. There's also, I see some stuff coming up in the chat as well. There's also, if you're starting a landscaping project or you want to create a plan, a design for your yard, I've Ready Set Landscape Design. So if you want to do something new with your landscape, that's a free mini course as well. It's like a 2-part video series. This is what I do. I help people to plan their outdoor living spaces to create not just beautiful, but also functional, sustainable, and so on landscapes. I love helping everybody with their projects. Do you have a video or an upcoming topic about garden lighting or designing with lighting? I don't have that planned out, but that could be a good one. Where'd my pen go? Any other video requests? Shout them out. Designing with lighting it's so cool. It's so much fun. And it's also a big safety thing. Also designing where you don't want light can be interesting too. Planning out, nighttime light pollution is a thing. It can actually affect, if you think about fireflies, declining firefly populations are in part because we have so much light at night. And so there can be some strategies, right, where we're planning out how do we create beautiful lighting for us as humans while also having parts of our yard that maybe are set aside for some of these creatures as well. It's a ton of fun. It's a huge safety thing too. And it can create a really cool effect. Yeah. Thank you all so much for being here. I'll be here again next week, Thursday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. We just completed a series all about landscape design, and I'm going to continue sharing about some more updates about things, projects, and so on. If you have topic requests, please share them. Even if you're here watching the replay, share them in the comments below. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.